Boom, hello. Let's roll. You know the drill. I'm just getting present, just being here. If you're coming in live, we will say hello in the comments, kind of get situated, make sure our environment is, somewhat pristine. And if you are coming in after the fact, then maybe we'll scroll through just a few minutes because we'll get started in just a few minutes. So we're going to share it in a couple of groups. Say hello if you're here, and we'll just roll through the flow of tonight. You guys know the drill. For those of you who haven't been joining these, then just sit tight a few minutes. We're going to get started with some Q&A. I got some kind of initial intentions, but not too much. Hey, Neva, much love. So we're just sharing this in a couple of groups. If you are generally with us, then sharing this right off the bat would be appreciated. There's always value coming in from the questions and the comments, the answers, etc. So we're just, getting this set up in a couple of groups. Just sit tight for a minute or so, maybe two. And say hello. Say hello if you're here. If there's questions already, then we can just start with those. I mean, you know how I roll. I'd much rather just be answering questions than any specific topics from my end. So I'm just going to get this in a few of our groups, and we'll keep the ball rolling. But again, say hello if you're here. Hey, Neva. Hey, Leah. Great to have you here. And we're going to get rolling. Like I mentioned, February's been an interesting month for people. Kind of dull in some ways, but in other ways, not so much. Very paradoxical. And also, I mean, we're looking at March, which is going to blast off in so many ways. So we'll get into that tonight, and how we're all navigating this. Hey, Sarah. Good to have you here. What up, Josh? Been seeing all the posts are on fire, my friend. So just give me a minute. We're just sharing in a couple more of our groups to make sure everyone has access to what we're flowing through tonight. Feel free to tag anyone or share this video as well, especially if you've been here already. And if there's any specific questions in regards to your current space of existence at this moment, for those who are new, I mean, naturally, we're covering a broad scope of topics when it comes to the nature of living awakened, living from that space of pure awareness, from that sense of self, and the supporting tools in which come around that, whether that's our nutrition, our passion, our vocation, whether that's the relationship elements, our means of organizing our abundance and resource. There's so many elements around that. So we leave nothing out, but at least the intention of coming to the nature of truth, the nature of oneself, realizing one's true nature. This is what we're fixated upon as the focal point, putting the cart behind the horse. And from that vantage point, then how are we diving fully into our business, our vocation, our passions, our relationships, etc. And maybe in this session, March coming in this next month. Hey, Tanya, good to see you. So it's great to have everyone as always. Just gonna start in just 1 minute. I'm liking this invite feature that we have here. It's always a blast to utilize. But so I mean, again, if there's questions, we can just jump into that. Things that are currently flowing with you. As I mentioned, February has been kind of an interesting month. A lot of changes, a lot of openings for people. But also a space of a little bit of dullness, a little bit of lower energy, etc. And this is just a kind of a test of patience, right? A test of the will of patience to, prepare oneself for what's to come in March. A true blast off of 2018, and a recognition that 2018 is an ass kicking year, in the sense of kicking your ass, kicking the ass of the person who needs the ass kicking, right? And it's a beautiful, humbling experience because we've come to know a lot of great information, knowledge, wisdom, insight, etc. that gives you a clarity as to what the importance of these times, the importance of the time in your experience, presently, for transformation, for change, for clarity, and seeing the shifts ripple throughout the globe in whatever way that looks like to you. But we'll keep it as practical as we can tonight, as always. So as I mentioned, if there's questions, let's just dive in. I'm going to just continue my invites because I'm really liking this tool. Really potent tool I have at my disposal here. But I'll continue that later. I'm doing my first online course right now on spirituality. Oh, interesting. The course game is always an interesting one. Hey, Chris, good to see you, man. So yeah, if you're here, then let's dive in. Let's throw in the questions and get clear. One tidbit as well. I have some announcements I'm going to present later, but I've been really trickling out a number of various things that are happening at this time. I think in one way to crack the whip a little bit, at least from my perspective, when it comes to the nature and how we're approaching spirituality. The course piece is an interesting one that's been brought up because there's courses everywhere. We're seeing courses all over the globe from every which different teacher, etc. And so many of you have heard much of the journey that I've been on this over this past while, which isn't of importance. It's really what's the work in which is of importance, which is the means in which we bring more integrity to the teachers we listen to. Where are they residing? Can we actually know for certain, or know to a certain degree of accuracy where this individual is residing, and how we're putting our time and energy into listening from that individual? And also from the perspective of recognizing that awakening doesn't really need to be a process, especially if you're here. If you're here in this space, awakening is a process. It seems that way, but it can happen much more rapidly than one can imagine. But it simply really requires one to let go of everything they thought life was, everything they thought existence was, so that they can see what remains. It's like, let everything go and see what remains. This is the beautiful pointer with that. So there's a question here. Can you speak on the topic of sexual hypnosis, specifically men falling to habits to live out sexual fantasies which are out of integrity with their greater visions? Yeah, totally. I mean, I was just actually diving into a little bit that last night. In regards to the topic of entity attachment, pornography, the nature of fantasy within mind. There's an exploration space that many are in at this time, exploring the needs of monogamy, polyamory, especially in the spiritual community, like kind of being a floater, like you can kind of go wherever and just lay your seed and all this shit, right? And there's a certain validity to that, and it opens one up to exploring the nature of flow and dynamics within relationships. But at the same time, there's also, and it's not but, I've been getting away from using the word but, because but generally brings forth some idea that there's the next thing I'm going to say is better. So this is not what I'm getting at. There is a beauty in polyamory, there's a beauty in monogamy, and there's a beauty in exploring one's sexual nature. Now, from a masculine perspective, this is the simplistic way we can look at the sexual experience. From a feminine perspective, the female cultivates energy through the nature of the orgasm, through the pleasure, and through all of that, and they really aren't running out, and the way they would potentially run out is with a partner who is there simply for the physical experience, treating the woman as an object, et cetera, et cetera. So the nature of the woman's experience, if they're with a partner in which they're truly connected with, they are there to just fully cultivate that energy, and then also bring forth the energy for the masculine, but in a way in which the masculine can cultivate their own energy in the same sense, because both have their own responsibility. But from the masculine's perspective or the male's perspective, ejaculation is the piece in which is going to cause, it doesn't cause copious amounts of problems if it's done sporadically, but really you're looking at a drain of energy every time that seed is released. So the nature of the masculine male perspective, and this connects in with the pornography culture, which is one of the biggest money industries on the planet, right? We must remember that, right? And it's that way because of the nature of primarily the masculine energy, the male figure that is looking to release this energy and just put to waste the sexual energy, right? So for anyone who's feeling that, right, needing to move into those directions or wanting to release whatever, I mean, there's a beauty with that. But firstly, learning the means of cultivation of that energy so you can move that energy through the body, and more importantly, recognizing that sexual energy is just creative energy, and creative energy flows through creative projects, creative endeavors, creative experience, right? Living life creatively doesn't mean you're painting a bunch of Picasso pictures or you're running a bunch of businesses. It simply means that the intention by which one is bringing forth their energy into every moment is that of a creative experience. They're overflowing their love, their energy, excuse me, into the moment, right? Expecting nothing in return, because that's the true essence of creativity. Is you're igniting it, letting it go, and seeing if it returns, and knowing that it will, but there's no real attachment to this. Now, once again, with the sexual experience, the masculine energy that's so predominated around ejaculation, this is the constant destruction of the creative force, right? It's the destruction of the masculine energy. So then that is the source issue, which then webs into addictions to pornography and fantasies. Fantasies also being a form of, we could call astral rape, right? One's imagining sexual experience with another being and hasn't asked for consent in some sense, right? There's an inward movement of energy, imagination. This is not much different than physical rape. This is what we need to understand, because the mind doesn't work differently. The mind registers the same things inwardly as it does if you were doing externally. So we have to understand the nature of what's occurring there, right? So that's a big one to chew for some people, but this is the reality. So once as those things are, just like anything, any thought, feeling, sensation that's appearing that one needs to move their attention away or move their attention to the background, to that awareness in which is simply aware, this practice applies to everything, including the fantasies and the things that arise within one's mind that are pulling one's sexual force, which is the creative force, in a direction in which may not be really useful for that moment in time, that person's, as you say, their vision, their endeavor, their vision, So we covered a number of different things, and we probably can go into a million different questions around that, but it's coming into the nature of what sexual energy is really for. And there is a beauty in the experience of sexual experience with another from a deeply loving and connected and enjoyable place. And then there's also the means in which we can utilize that creative force and creative energy to manifest, to create, to endeavor, to adventure, right? So, but there's some really interesting pieces we just went into there that I feel, and one thing I didn't touch on, which Joshua said ST demons was an interesting piece. We talked about this on Wednesday, the nature of interdimensional experience, recognizing that there are beings on wavelengths in which one can't perceive. And when it comes to the sexual energy and the darkness in which comes, there's light and dark in everything, but through the sexual force, because it is the most powerful experience of the carnal human body, it holds the capacity and potential to be, unbelievably loving and expansive, and also its complete opposite in the death and destruction. And this is why, of course, sex is used in such a controlling mechanism in our world at this time. And so when it comes to beings and energies in which one can perceive but are certainly there, that are influencing one's tendencies, thought patterns, emotions, cravings, addictions, well, when it comes to the sexual energy, this is the most, where the most attention of darker beings are, right? So, even watching pornography in some sense, or taking part in sexual experiences in which are not so intentionally proper, like, again, just treating this other as an object, just a piece of meat, etc. This brings forth it attracts those energies and those entities. And of course, many may have heard this before, but any person you have sexual intercourse with, or even mentally, astrally visualizing it in your mind, there is a connection that is built, a cord in which is created. And if it's not with the most proper intention, then there will be consequences to that, in the sense of attachments and energy drains and things of this nature, right? So it's just to paint the picture for you, but of course, everything that I'm bringing forth when it comes to, and many other teachers, but when it comes to, returning to one's true sense of self and practicing self-inquiry with a certain sense of depth and focus and persistence, this will generally dissolve many of those things, because the energy is not being given to that. And other modalities can be used to, release things and different things, but I like to kill infinite birds with one stone. We don't need to get too much into all the details, but that was a juicy first question, so thanks, Josh. If there's any further questions on that, get into it, but it's certainly quite a topic, right? For many. So if there's other questions on that, or if that clarifies everything for you, Josh, if not, then let's continue. Long guilty feelings around sex. Can you touch on that? Lifelong guilty feelings around that. Okay, well, let's just dive into this then. This is generally when I like to have the sessions on Zoom, so I can really interact with you, or face to face. So sometimes with these, diving into this with me one-on-one is much more profound and powerful. But we'll just do it here, and everyone can join in. So Tanya, we're just going to go into this, and I'd like you to just, because you asked the question, it naturally will be quite prevalent in the body. So I just want you to tune into where you feel that in the body here in this moment. And everyone can do this with you if you have some sort of guilt or something around. It doesn't need to be just sex, but it can be anything. And so Tanya, we're tuning into and just bringing the attention and awareness to the direct sensation in the body of where this is being experienced. And so you don't need to type anything or respond. I just want you to move into this. So we're moving into just simply being aware of it, bringing all the attention to the sensation, releasing from any need to jump into the story about the sensation or about where potentially it's come from. Maybe a memory may arise, but let's just keep our attention on the sensation in the body. Crown at the top of the head is open, so the natural energy flow can just flow through the body easily. You can feel it moving through the top of the head. And so we're just continuing to come back to that silent awareness that's witnessing everything, right? And this awareness is not localized in the specific area of where you're feeling it. You're just simply aware of what's there, and it may have just released. It may have gotten lighter. It may have expanded. It may have moved. And so you can feel it moving through the top of the head, just naturally releasing. And again, just continuing to dissolve to that place of just simply being aware. And so you can just share with us and share how you're experiencing that, if at all. It could have gotten much more expanded. Maybe it dissipated. Maybe it's gone. Maybe it moved. And all of you, if you're continuing to work with this, we're just continuing to come back to that place in which is just simply aware. You're not needing it to change, to heal, to release. So we're just following it now. So I want you to continue with that. Again, surrendering into the body completely, surrendering into that space of awareness that needs nothing from this experience, doesn't need to change, doesn't need it to release, doesn't need it to be loved, nothing. There's just simply an awareness of what's there. So we're getting out of the way completely for it to do what it needs to. The emotion may move, it may get bigger, it may get smaller, it may release through the top of the head or through the feet. It may just completely dissolve as if it never was there in the first place. Okay, yeah, so that's generally where it will get stuck in the throat. So again, just movement of attention with whatever's there. Remember, awareness is only ever aware. So whatever is appearing, whether it's a sensation, a feeling, a thought, no matter where it is in the body, there's an instantaneous awareness of that, right? You know, we're in a safe space. We can simply just be aware of everything that's occurring. So even the micro sensations in the body, you can signal to the crown, you can open that so that the channel is open there and everything can release naturally. And again, everyone else that's doing this is just a continual coming back to that sense of getting out of the way, letting any emotion, feeling, sensation to do what it needs to. Whether it's guilt around this topic of sexual experience or anything at all, we're not interested in the story, nor are we interested in it healing or releasing. There's no interest in changing anything but what is, leaving it be. So as that's feeling in a certain sense resolved, Tanya, you can share that. And if not, we continue. This is the certain sense of discipline that we're working with when it comes to this method, right? There's a certain sense of discipline and persistence that we're not leaving it, we're leaving it be, and we're resting with it for as long as it needs to be there, right? Whatever emotion, whatever energy. That's fine. So Tanya is communicating it's still there in the throat, which is fine. There's just a continual practice of being with that, right? So the nature of the emotional energy that's there works in a way in which continues to hold your attention for as long as you're, in a sense, holding its attention there. You know, what I mean by that is that if there's any certain inclination or need for the emotion or the feeling to release, to get better, to heal, etc., really all this is coming down to is that it shouldn't be there, right? What's present shouldn't be there. And so, in other words, what we're doing is we're saying this experience in which I've had that I have not resolved shouldn't have happened. And in other words, I want to pretend like it didn't happen. That's really what is being communicated. So we're continuing to come back to that place in which can be okay with whatever is. You know, this week I was speaking to one of my leadership clients. I hate that term, client, whatever, just student, friend that I work with. And you know, she's going through quite a transformational space. And this transformational space is a highly advanced space, you know, and it brings a certain level of uncertainty because not many others are facing it, and it seems like it's going backwards because it's filled with, you know, all of the gunk that's coming up. There's a lot of confusion, clarity, and lack of clarity, you know, because everything's arising, but yet there's a recognition of not an interest in what's arising. And it's all these things are arising, but that, yeah, there's still peace. And that freaks the egoic self out, you know? And so I said, well, if you're pissed, to be pissed. If you're depressed, to be depressed. If you want to, drop all spirituality, drop all spirituality. Like whatever it is, be with what exactly what that is. Nothing matters more than to be authentic with the moment, which is a resting with everything that's arising, needing none of it to change. So Tanya, in the same space, and anyone else is still practicing this. And this entire session is this. We must understand, we're going through a practice here, but really the entire session here of just being in this presence is a pointer to the nature of getting out of the way completely and having faith that whatever is needing to be resolved is resolved in these circles. That is it. This is why you're spending your time, the 10, 12, 11 people that are here, you're spending your time here because there's a faith in whatever's here. And that faith has nothing to do with me per se, nor does it have to do with who you think you are. It has to do with a certain recognition of the truth of this moment, or a recognition of this now moment that can never change, that has never changed. And no matter what does change, it constantly just changes on top of this unchanging self. And there's an interest in wanting to get to know that, to remember what that is. And so that's getting out of the way completely. So allowing for the emotion to be stuck, or the emotion to get big, or the emotion to get small, or to be dissolved. It's an allowing for all to arise exactly as it needs to arise. So yeah, Tanya, update me through this however you're feeling. But again, as we're tuning into this, one of the ways in which we can continue to move to the place in which is not caught up in the need for anything to heal or change is the question, who is the one suffering in this moment? Who is the one suffering here? Right? Who is the one suffering this emotion? Who is the one suffering this pain? This question will always lead you to a space of peace if you're sincere in the questioning. Right? A sincerity in the questioning, to recognize that the one in which the egoic mind believes that is suffering is not the one actually suffering, because that self does not exist. If we are truly spiritual seekers in the sense that we know that there's something beyond just the body mind. If that's not the case, well then of course one's going to have difficulty with understanding, well of course it's this. I'm this body, I'm this vehicle, However, if one is truly looking for that in which will not perish at death, because that's the nature of all seeking, is to find that in which will not perish at death. So if that's truly the essence of seeking, well then, if that's the essence of seeking, that will guide one to a recognition that there certainly is something that doesn't perish at death, right? That thus is most likely not the one suffering this moment, not the one suffering this emotion, not the one suffering all of this happening, because there's one perceiving all of the happenings, all of the appearances, right? And who is that? What is that? So if there's more questions, we can dive in. I hope that exercise was potent for you. When I do it one-on-one, we can get really intricate with it in some sense, but it's not so intricate. However, I mean, this is your fucking golden nugget, that singular practice that we just did here, that you're receiving for free on Facebook, is generally charged, by personal development teachers who also don't even have the capacity in many ways to teach it in the same way. And I'm not saying I'm special, there's other teachers that do it like this, but that may be charging like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for the programs, some even upwards of $1 million for a coaching session. So I want to paint the picture for you that just because I'm putting this out for free, and I've mentioned this before, I put these out for free, I do enjoy it. And many of you, I work with, and there's a constant flow, but recognize that there's a need to take this seriously, right? So if you need to I always open stuff up for donations, sending money, joining our programs. If you feel like that will ignite a certain sense of seriousness, then it will. I don't believe that's the case for everyone, that you need to invest to take things seriously. However, I do know that things will not have their effect unless one takes it seriously and recognizes the importance of the energy exchange that's available. Right? So we're focusing on a very simple exercise, but what we're focusing on is something that quite frankly, can transform every area of your existence. And just from that notion, one comes to a certain peace with whatever their life is at the moment, not needing it to change, because they recognize that changing all of the experiences of their life, like much of the personal development promise is, if you change everything, you're going to just be ecstatic and everything. This is a part of that. But we recognize that the foundation must be set. The foundation must be clear for any of that to actually matter. Right? It's similar to the detoxing conversation. We're starting a detox next week, by the way. I haven't been mentioning much, but if you want information, there's a full detox program starting next week. And we can talk about macronutrients and proteins and all of that, but none of that matters until one who generally has been living in the body at minimum, anyone who's living for maybe 15 years or more in this body is in requirement to do a very deep detox. And that's the reason being that macronutrients don't matter if the detox has not been done, because the body is not able to absorb the majority of those macronutrients anyways. So it's the same notion of, manifesting and creating things and making life happen. If one is not doing that on the foundation of a realization of their truth as themselves, knowing themselves deeply, then all of the changes don't matter at all. It's the same rat race, right? And so when realization happens, what naturally occurs is the balancing out into that space of really not giving a shit of how things occur, recognizing that everything happens in a spontaneous manner, right? Everything will happen spontaneously and happen in alignment with your karmic nature, your astrology, right? So that's why it's comforting to get your astrology reading, your natal chart, your human design, etc., because that opens one up to a clarity of the natural path in which is to unfold. You see? So there's some key points in there that I want to make sure is very clear with everyone, that we just go through an exercise here that certainly is simple, but if practiced in the presence of a teacher as well, that expedites it even further. But this is what is going to make the difference. If one is willing to practice the simplest of experiences, which is simply being aware of all the emotional stuff that's coming up and arising, right? And for most of you that are here, there's an awareness of this, there's a recognition of the importance of this, right? But the practice is so vital. It is so vital. Question one-on-one. Yeah, there's space for one-on-one. I'm opening the schedule a little bit. I said February was a bit of social month and March won't be, and this is true. There's a couple core projects that we're launching. One in particular I spoke about, which was in regards to an alchemical formula that is to be released in North America. It's just being released now. It's an old Tibetan formula. It's there's not many words I have for it other than I'll just leave it at that. And as the rest of that comes out, then I'll keep you guys in the loop. But I'm heavily involved in bringing this to North America. But there is space for one-on-ones and connecting with me. I always make time. So, and this is why I do these. So connect with me however you would like. I'll put the link in for everyone to do that if you'd like. But if there's more questions, we can continue. I mean, we know that it's always coming back to similar spaces. So that's why, we just keep repeating the same message, get it repetitive in the mind, reprogram the mind frame and the system of what's going on in there. And just drive it home, So if there's more questions, let's just dive through. I will speak about March a bit later for those that are sticking for that. I mean, you can already feel it. Tell me how you're feeling right now in February. It'd be good. And I spoke about, the title of today is Perpetual Transition, right? So I'm never one to say, this is it. I'll say it because I'll say it in a way in which resonates with what surely the energy is being felt, right? The astrology is moving in a certain way. So within time, within relativity, you may feel that. but perpetual transition is occurring, especially for those in this call who are resonant with this message. There's a perpetual transition, a perpetual change, because that's all life has ever been, right? So sure, in the beginning it seems exciting because you're going through these up levels and stuff, but that's just the release of the mucus and the toxicity and the baggage that has been confining one to see the reality of perpetual change. Right. Do you have insights for those who want to support the shift as teachers in a way that maintains integrity? Sure. I mean, speak what you're practicing. Speak only what you're practicing. And sure, that there's a certain natural bridge of also recognizing that the teacher-student relationship is only held to the degree in which one still is really involved in that identity, right? So it happened to me in the social media space. The social media space has bred many people sharing their journey in the form of a teaching, right? So they really are just, and I did this much in my space as well, which is a sharing of the path, a sharing of the journey, of things in which are already occurring. So if you're transparent with that, right? Like, I'm going to be doing the detox program with you all. You know, I've just finished the Rasa transmission over 6 months and received it. You know, I'm heavily involved in this liberation alchemical formula. Learning astrology now, all these things. So I'm heavily involved in all the things in which are being brought forth. Every message that comes to my mouth will only be a message in which has been known, has been integrated, you know, has been experienced. And if not, there will also be a communication of that notness, and that continues the communication of respect and the recognition. Now, the other piece is that through my work with Ramaji and the level of consciousness system, many people, I wouldn't say many, there are some people in which are resistant to the idea that there's a means to quantify where you are on the scale, and a recognition that a true spiritual teacher is only one who will come to the final end. You know, if one is speaking about spiritual enlightenment but yet has not reached the end of that seeking, because there is an end to seeking, there isn't an end to embodiment or to expression, because that's infinite, then there will always be a feeling of lack of integrity, even if one is trying their best, because inwardly they're still seeking. Right, so that that calibration tool, and that's the program we're working with Ramaji and Ananda. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, Leah, because you're new, just send me a message and I'll connect you. But that quantification means assist one with the modern way of integrity amongst the millions of spiritual teachers. And on the other end, I mean, for the most part, I'd say completely. As the seeking ends inwardly, there's a clear recognition of the illusion of spirituality and materiality, student and teacher, enlightened being, not enlightened being. These are all a dissipated essence. These are all dissolved perspectives, right? So before, from my perspective, my experience, before, as I would do these sessions, there was a certain identity held around that teacher space, right? And now, sure, there could be like fizzling out phases of that, but really it's just, okay, let's get on, let's talk, let's answer questions and communicate and converse. But there's nothing other than to say other than what the questions are arising, because anything else to say other than that really is just what I want to speak to myself. So that can be a sharing, right? That could be something I would like to share, but there's also a clarity with that inwardly. There's a need for that clarity inwardly, right? So what I found in the social media scene, the coaching scene at this time, is there's a lot of blurred lines between sharing and teaching and coaching and all of it. And that surely gets one caught up in their own, inner confusion. And that's a phase we're moving through collectively, which is a beautiful phase, right? So there's nothing wrong with any of this. These are just my clear perspectives, right? And so it's a recognition that, at least in my experience, as seeking had ended, there was further integration needed. So that's why many of the things I'm speaking of are very embodiment focused. And on the other end, there's a certain silence. I haven't really been posting much at all, and I don't want this really to be about me. I'm just giving you an example, because there's nothing to say. Like the seeking has ended. So for me, there's an abidance in that. There's a depth of a celebration within that, right? And whatever wants to come forth as a means of service to others in form of teaching or what have you, will come really spontaneously. right? It will come spontaneously in the form of everyday experience. What is the immediate environment? What is needed? What projects get placed in my lap? What questions are asked? These types of things, right? And as one who is coming to that space, if you're in this space, anyone who views themselves as a teacher, a healer, coach, etc., there's a need to recognize that everything that's happening around you will be mirrored, right? It will always be just this mirrored experience. So if that's the case, and really the highest of experiences one could give to a student is for their mirror to be clear, for one to be in that deep sense of clarity, then one can only look to be clear themselves, right? Empty, silent, right? And that doesn't mean silent of mouth. Obviously my mouth is moving quite often, right? At least in these sessions, I mean, but you get what I'm getting at, right? And I'm not looking at the comments, so I'm going to look in now just to see what's coming through. I feel compelled to aid them, yes. Yeah, totally. Facilitate deepening wisdom, yeah. And so the more in which you're recognizing that it's really just a friendship, firstly, that friendship may have an exchange of value with it, right? And it's just lowering the expectations, right? When one's lowering their expectations on themselves, recognizing that clearly if one is here with you, there's value. If they're exchanging, money for it, there's value. If they're seeing results, there's value. There's so many levels to that value, right? But all of that is to be destroyed as well. And what I mean is, like, the image in which that brings to you or creates for you is to be destroyed perpetually. So there's a humility as to what's occurring, right? There's nothing special about it. You don't have some special power, not some righteous being. That's the humility, and that's why, for many, teaching before the end of seeking, it creates a certain obstacle in that sense, right? It creates a certain opening for one to, get up on the high horse a little bit, which is okay, because you'll fall back off and you'll hit your butt and you'll have to, feel that, and it's all beautiful, right? But at least from my perspective, my experience, is what I would say. So I hope that answers that. I mean, it's really embodying the truth of the nature of oneself, slowing down, listening to the environment, hearing the environment out, knowing what the environment is speaking to you, because the environment is your immediate student and teacher. That's the reality, right? So the closer the more intimate we become with that, and the listening of the heart, the true listening of the heart, this is where you really recognize, firstly, how much is really here, how much opportunity and everything, and then how much you are also the student, and you also play the role of the teacher, and those things begin to merge. They really begin to merge because of humility. That's the only way that those two can merge, is if humility is there, right? Because humility is simply a recognition that one doesn't know anything. So you don't know you're a student, you also don't know you're a teacher. Right. So in one moment you can be a teacher, next moment you're a student, because there's humility, and then you can go back to a teacher again. It's like there's a constant fluidity and flexibility. It's a beautiful thing, but it's a practice. Don't get caught up. Yes, and that's Ramaji in his book 1000. He speaks of this very similar to me. Teachers can crystallize themselves, and we see this. They're all over YouTube, millions of followers. Right, and you can just tell. You can see. So it's a funny space. We're in a very different time at this moment. So thank you, Leah, for that. Joshua, it seems there is a big value difference in politically correct versus enlightened perspective. Is it possible for these two to ever be in sync? Today I posted a spiritual truth on my Facebook, and having several people feel offended because it wasn't PC. It wasn't, I don't know what that means, proper, I guess, for me to post specifically because I'm a man, regardless of the truth being stated. Yeah, I mean, you're going to, a simplified version of the question, is privilege a relevant topic in the enlightenment conversation? Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, well, the reality is this. It's going to be quite difficult for one. There's a reason why the systems of spirituality have stages and steps. So if one is skipping stages or steps, they're just making it more difficult. That's all. So for instance, somebody in a war-torn country with no food, no water, no safety, security. The means in which they're going to be able to sit and meditate and deeply contemplate and inquire and to listen to a guru, it's slim. It's slim because the consciousness in which is surrounding them, the environment, the lack of safety, the needs, the physical human needs that are not met, are not going to provide one with the ability to seek truly, with conviction and with more ease, right? So I would say that actually a good portion of the spiritual scene has done that, and this is in many ways why many are just involved in spiritual seeking for the longest of times, because there's a clarity of the needs not being met, basic needs that are not being met, and because those basic needs are not being met, and an adaptation to modern society, it creates a constant battle. That's it. A constant battle. So privilege, from the sense that one has handled what they need to handle, I wouldn't even call it privilege. I would move away from that altogether. I would just say there are steps and stages in which one needs to prepare the foundation for realization to happen. And this can happen very quickly. It's not to say that it's going to take 40 years. It's to say that, and the rasa transmission is a perfect example of this, because it's the feminine energy. It's the feminine transmission. It's the feminine energy coming to you to dissolve and to be gentle with you and to bring you to truth and realization, and to show you all the things that you may have skipped, avoided, not wanted to look at, of the human experience that you thought you were going to transcend by being some spiritual seeker. Right? So a perfect example of this in my case was, I lived with very little money for 4 or 5 years, even running a very successful business. I was basically living the monk life, covering up maybe worthiness issues or connection with the mother, connection with the cosmic energy, and looking to just relive past life energy as a monk, maybe Theravada Buddhist vows, these types of things. And so as the rasa purification, all of that occurred, it was a huge shift in my perspective with money, and the need for it, and the interest in it, and the embracing of it, right? And just like I just mentioned, the recognition that if one's receiving spiritual energy, spiritual conversation, spiritual satsang, spiritual truth, and not providing energy or value back to the teacher, back to that in return in some form, one's not going to get the message. They're not going to receive the energy, the teaching, right? And so and so that works both ways, right? So I view that people who are conscious and awake should be it's not they should be richer than everyone else. They should be in abundance, just like everybody else who's awake in that space. All should be in that space of abundance, right? Because there's a recognition of that foundation that opens one up to the infinite, right? It's like the body recognizing the detoxing and the nutrition, all that, as a foundation for the light, the higher frequencies and energies to come through. That's the only way that could happen. That's the only way that one could hold that type of energy in the body, is if things are purified, things are cleansed. Right? And there's exceptions with that in some sense. It's not perfection, it's not becoming the perfect human so that you're prepared for enlightenment. It can happen to anybody. And then if it happens, it will purify you anyways. But it's a recognition of one is not better or worse. And I would say that we're at a time in which the entire paradigm of seeking spirituality, what we view as an enlightened person, everything, all of that, completely transforming and creating into something not new, but a new form, right? So not new in its essence, it will always be the same principles, right? But new in its form, new in its whatever, representation, appearance, etc. Right? So yeah, and then on the post of posting stuff on Facebook, I learned this the hard way too. There's a beautiful quote by Sadhguru. It goes along the lines of something like this. In every action, look to not cause resistance in the other or cause resistance in yourself. And I resisted this for a long time, clearly, of you want to say truth things, and you want to, say your opinion and talk consciousness, everything, but there's also a recognition of one who is in the space, who, if one truly desires to serve those in their environment, then it's to take note as to the feedback one's receiving from the environment, even if it seems to you that, okay, it's their ego, it's their projection. Well, that's not the case, right? Because in the space of truth, it's not their ego, it's yourself. It's not their projections, it's yourself. It's not their illusionary opinions, it's yourself. Right? So there's an embracing of it all, and there's a recognition of practice now. How do I practice bringing forth the message in a way that doesn't push everyone's buttons? It doesn't sugarcoat things, but it doesn't push anyone's buttons, right? It doesn't attack people. It doesn't push people aside. It embodies, it expresses the message that you are. It embodies everything that you have become, everything that you have realized. Right? So we can speak here about entities. We can speak here about Illuminati. We can speak here about pedophilia. We can also speak here about a Kundalini yoga. We can speak here about nutrition. We can speak about all these topics. And we can find a way for all of you that this message applies in some way that you can understand it practically. And recognize that we don't need to be children and get angry about something that we don't like because we just don't want to hear it. We can actually open our ears and heart and see, is there a way in which we can work together in this exchange to see both sides? We don't need to draw opinions, conclusions about anything. There's just a conversation, right? And there's also a certain level degree of respect for one that you, for one that you're teaching per se or expressing to, because that respect, as recognizing that these may be students and they may have less or more knowledge or whatever the mindset is, which probably wouldn't necessarily be there, but if that's the case, then there's a recognition that there's a respect in just them being a human, just them being yourself, just them being the self, right? Source in the reflection. And so that respect is what garners respect in this direction, because there's no difference, right? There's no directional thing. I'm just pointing it out from a relative perspective, right? So if you are to be posting about things, communicating things, sharing things that maybe few know at this time, then there has to be a certain level of grounded nature in how that's being shared, and how you are taking responsibility for how these words are going to affect others that are viewing it, others that are hearing, right? Because if they are yourself, you would desire to treat them as yourself, so you would desire for them to feel okay and safe with your words. Not coddled, but safe. Coddling doesn't mean unsafe. I mean, you get what I mean, right? So I implore you, so as a tool for this week, for everyone that's here, if you are sharing, it's like, how are we sharing from that space, right? And I'm included with this. How are we sharing from that space in which is, you be true to yourself in the sense of how you'd like to express. If you're abrupt, you're abrupt. But also recognizing that, how are you bringing forth this energy? And how are you responding to the comments and the reflections in which you get back? Because if it's truly coming from that unconditional space, even if you're abrupt, then naturally, if there's resistance coming back and you're feeling that, well then, there's something to look at, right? There's something to explore. So I hope that helps you. So let's keep it going. Share this video too. There's a lot of good, juicy topics. We started with sex and then we went into a bunch of other stuff. So this is great. Full moon energy in effect tomorrow. So say hello if you're here. I clearly have not heard it from everybody, I don't think. So if you are here, say hello. And share this video, number 2. And then if there's more questions, let's keep it going. I'm open to keeping it rolling a little bit today. I'm enjoying this energy. Much love. Oh yeah, I'm doing my first event in Montreal this Saturday. Any of you are there? We just heard it's Nuit Blanche, which I guess is the kind of like pinnacle event every year in Montreal. So I'm pretty excited about it. My fiance's birthday, so it's gonna be fun. But if you're in Montreal, or if you have friends in Montreal, you know the drill. So if there's more questions, let's flow. Yes, definitely listen to this one. This was a juicy one. I mean, they're all juicy in their own way. I stopped saying this was the best one ever a long time ago. No, it's so funny. Oh shit, bunch of questions. Oh, Tanya should be there. Awesome. Is thought the source of all our problems? Well, who's observing thought? Who's observing thought? If one can inquire to this, then they can recognize that thought is not the source of all your problems. Right? It's the belief and the attachment in the one in which seems to take ownership over all these thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Right? But we see that that's just fog. So when we're caught up within the constant changingness of thought, feeling, sensation, there's a feeling that, oh, there's someone taking care of all these thoughts, feelings, sensations. There's someone that owns all these thoughts, feelings, sensations. I'm not going to inquire who that is or if that even exists. If I know that for certain, that's just it. So that's the egoic self. Yet when we inquire to find the ego, we can't find it. Right? Just do this in this moment. Find the ego. Continue to do your inquiry. Move to the background of every appearance, which is a denial of what arises. And I don't mean it apathetically or an avoidance. Just okay, it arises. I'm not interested. It arises. I'm not interested. I'm continuing to come to that background, to this background. I'm only interested in this background. Right? And that's going straight through. So it's not going around the feeling or around the thought. It's going straight through. It's recognizing that this is just a spontaneous arising, spontaneous arising, spontaneous arising. I am not the one that's arising this thought or arising this feeling. Right? And because I am not the one, then I'm not taking it personally. If someone is attacking this thought or something's attacking this feeling, or so this is the inquiry. Right? That this is the importance of this inquiry. Who is the one watching? Who is the one there? And even just the inquiry on the ego itself. Who is the ego? What is the ego? Can I find this ego? Can I find this overarching self that owns all of these thoughts, feelings, sensations, and holds on to them? Okay, well, where's the boundary to that container? Can we move through this? Right? This is the contemplation. This is the movement. Where's the boundary? Where's the end to the container in which holds all of these thoughts and feelings and sensations? Because if there's one in which holds all of them, there must be a container, right? There must be that. But can you find the end to that container? You see, so thoughts and feelings and sensations just arise within this illusionary container, this belief that there is a container. And as long as there's a belief that there's that container, which is the egoic mind, the egoic self, then there's a belief that these thoughts, feelings, sensations can be threatening. And I need to manage them all and make them all the best, So there's a constant, perpetual need to manage and manipulate and control, rather than recognizing that there is actually no container in which holds any of these. These are all just spontaneously arising. It seems orderly, but it's not actually orderly. right? Because order is really only a subject within time in many ways, right? There's other degrees and dimensions to that, but in our viewpoint of order, there's an organization of time, of location, right? So thoughts and feelings and sensations, they all can arise. Every one of them can arise. And that is the willingness, right? I've used this example before. My puppy, he's gotten over this a little bit now, but he tests you, right? So he tries to get your attention, you don't give it to him. Gets your attention, doesn't give it to him. Gets your attention, and he has cute puppy eyes, so you want to look at him, right? And you don't give it. And then at some point he just gives up. He stops and he sits down and he just chills. So this is it. Right? Instead of diving into every thought, feeling, sensation that arises from a sense of a need to analyze, control, not from a sense of diving in, like completely embracing it, right? Because what I'm speaking to is the same essence of being devotionally involved in life fully, right? But if you're fully involved in life, which also represents a certain level of appreciation, gratitude, compassion, all of those, then what happens is that you spend more time with each present experience, with each arising. So that gives less room for involvement in every single thought that you want to jump into, every single feeling, every single new idea, every single thing that's just happening. Right, so there's a recognition here that thoughts are not the issue. Yes, they have power. It's not to say that they don't have power, but this is not the source of suffering. The source of suffering is identification with all that's arising. Right, so we keep it practical and we meditate, do your practice of who is the one suffering, or who is the owner of these thoughts, who is watching these thoughts, who is observing these thoughts. Can I find that, and can I inquire to what that is? As long as I need to, until I know what it is. Right, so leave it at that. So the true order is disorder. Yeah, you could say that. It's both. It's both. Anytime we're asking a question like that, we know it's both. When the space is dissolved, the observed become the observed. In some sense, it's just a recognition that there is no subject object. Everything just is. Everything just is. Everything just is. Because subject object is only a product of judgment. Right? Judgment that, and it's not a product of anything because it doesn't exist. that's the funny part. There is no subject object, right? There's not really a product of anything. It's another spontaneous arising. I think I missed Josh's piece. I suppose the making controversial statements in order to start conversation, and then perhaps felt burdened by the fire perspectives that came out of the woodwork. Yeah, sure. Be careful what you wish for, I guess. Yeah, observe it. Yeah. So subject, object, yeah, they don't exist. Everything is just arising. Everything just is happening within awareness, but awareness doesn't have human qualities. Like it's eyeing something. Awareness just is. Right, and so you're there now. You can all tune into this now. It's what's presently available here. As you just kind of like sink into it, relax into it. Just for the moment, just be safe here. Just know that nothing's important. Everything can be what it is. You can think the darkest thoughts. You can think the brightest of thoughts. All of it can just be. And there's a freedom in that. Yeah, much love, Tim. Is there some reason in the human being which causes us to fear our own power? Or is it that just cultural programming? Well, who's the one fearing? Can you find it? Can you find the one who is fearing its own power? And is that one who is fearing, is that his or her or its power, own power? You see, so there's a clarity here that as we've continued to go in for the past, 3-4 questions with everyone, there's a clarity that there isn't one suffering what's arising. It's just arising. So instead of there being one that's fearing, it's just fear-like sensations arising. Okay, I feel tension in my gut. I have thoughts coming up about past experiences or future projections. I'm having situations in my life in which are similar to these future projections past. So they're, reconfirming this. But within all of these happenings, where is the one that is taking ownership of all of those happenings? Who is that? So if we keep it practical, we see that, okay, no, it's just sensation arising, thought arising, feeling arising in this body-mind complex. That's what's happening. So, you have some blocked emotion or whatever, it tenses up. You think of someone, tenses up. You have a situation, it tenses up. Just like if you were to take a hot fork and poke it on someone, and there's an instant reaction. It's not you who's causing it. It's just the natural, spontaneous reaction. Right? So as we're all here and just abiding in the space and coming here, there's a perpetual inquiry. The entirety of the session is an inquiry to who is the one suffering, who is the one here, who is the one taking ownership of the so-called fear, of so-called power, of all that. Because what is one's own power? Is that not just another definition, an overlaying definition to hold something in place? My power is this. But that's not the case. Power is fluid. Power flows. Power comes in waves. Power is spontaneous. Power is applicable to the moment. We can't say it's just one. It's my power. It's the power. It's the power I have. No, this is not the case. This is again a humbling of oneself. Continuing to humble oneself. That no, that's just not the case. The power flows through you. The love flows through all of it. And really, it's all just the same thing. It's not power or love or compassion or gratitude. These are the holographic reflections which it takes in a specific moment, in which gives flavor to human experience, right? But it's only ever the self. It's God's will, right? That's the typical saying, that it's God's will. It's God's will being, it's only ever just the one same thing, arising and happening. So if that's truly the case, that's only ever what's occurring, then it is only ever okay. It's not we can be okay, because there's no one to be okay with it. It's okay. So we see this dissolution. Do we see that you are being completely dissolved? Everything that you think you are, everything that you think is there, dissolved. Simply by a willingness to inquire do I exist here? Is there something, the one that thinks they're suffering or thinks they're managing or thinks they're making things happen, is that ever really the case? May seem so. But in this moment, this is what we're doing here. We're resting in that. So if you have faith in this message, you can feel this. By having faith, you feel it instantly. And then it's up to you to continue to dissolve into that, right? The door is being shown and you have walked through, right? And then the dissolving into that. This is non-duality. So I hope that, clears things. There's more questions, we can continue. I'll go for just a little bit longer. And then for those that are asking for one-on-one stuff, yeah, you can, I'll put the link in. We will not have a Sunday session, at least at 1. I'll keep you updated to see if we'll do it at 7:30. I'll be coming back from Montreal. Next Wednesday we'll continue. March will have a new flavor for all of us. And the detoxing flow will be really going into the depth of the detoxing program. That will be continuing. The Rasa transmission will be continuing as well with Ramaji and Ananda. So if you're still wanting to join into the group sessions with that, then send me a message. Detox will be really potent, but yeah, it's all there for you. The resources are there, so take advantage of them. I'm assuming many of you are probably quite silent right now, so just, just be with that. Share the video if you can move a muscle. All right. So again, if there's any more questions, we can continue. If you're coming in later or just came in, I would highly recommend to rewatch this. This session in particular could really pop the lid for many people. So, I would recommend if you're here and you watch it, then rewatch, just feel into what's arising. Forget everything I've said, like don't hang on to any of the words or the answers or anything. There's an energy, that's all we're guiding to, and that's all we're dissolved. That's all the words are meant to do, is to dissolve any perspective of, false self, any attachment to, what one thinks they are, but may not be. So yeah, we'll just last little bit. If there's questions or comments you'd like to share, but we will start to wrap up. I'm going to link in my link for people who want to connect. And like I mentioned, if you're wanting to join the detox flow, it's a perfect time coming into spring, especially for those in Canada. That's why I waited off a little bit. Then I'd recommend that, because it just mirrors what we're speaking of here. It'll just assist with the body being able to come online with what you experience in your meditations, or in certain epiphanies, or openings of clarity. The body, if you would like it to stay prolonged, the body also, in my view, needs to be, in some ways pristine. You can get away with things all in balance and moderation, but we're in a time where there's a lot of cleansing required. So with that said, I'm going to close this off. So unless if anything else comes, I'll probably cover it on Sunday or next Wednesday. I'll keep you in the loop for doing Sunday night. And please share this video. This is really a powerful session. And again, if you're just coming in, rewatch what we've explored. So much love to you. It was great to connect as always. Maybe I'll see some of you in Montreal. Blessings, and enjoy your evening.